Let's park what he actually said. I'm more concerned about how you've been characterizing this. 14 words. Nothing in them is false. Nobody has denied anything. Nobody has raised their voice. And the meeting Iris walked into to talk about what Anton said is now a meeting about Iris. Almost everything written about blame-shifting psychology will tell you the person doing this has a fragile ego, that the move comes from shame or insecurity, or a personality disorder you can learn to spot. Watch the sentence instead. It has a subject, and the subject changed. Psychological manipulation is usually described as making someone believe something false. That is not what happened here. One thing first. Iris, Wes, and Anton are composed for this video. That line is the kind of sentence that gets said at work, not a transcript from a real company. The studies are real, and I name every one. There is a name for this specific pattern. DARVO. Deny, attack, reverse victim, and offender. The term comes from the psychologist Jennifer Freyd. The first study to test it as one connected pattern rather than three separate behaviors came from Sarah Harsey and her colleagues in the Journal of Aggression, Maltreatment and Trauma in 2017. That last part is their own claim about their own paper. They asked 138 university students to describe a time they had confronted someone over something that person had done. Then they asked how much denying, attacking, and role reversing had come back at them. The more of it people reported, the more they blamed themselves. The correlation was 0.312. Three things about that number. It is a correlation from a single sitting, from students remembering a confrontation, not a workplace, and not evidence that DARVO causes anything. And the authors say plainly that they could not verify the people being confronted had actually done anything wrong. They could not tell a guilty person's distortion from an innocent person's reaction to a false accusation. That cuts against the way I am about to use this. It should be said out loud. Now look at which part carried it. All three parts moved with self-blame. The attack moved with it most, at 0.321. But denial was in there too, at 0.253, and the paper never tested whether the gap between those two was real. Where the person confronted was rated as having apologized, the association was minus 0.021, essentially nothing. So here is my reading, and it is mine. The self-blame is not really about being told you are wrong on the facts. It is about being told something about you while you were trying to talk about an event. And this is where the workplace version separates from every other kind. At work, how you raised it is a completely legitimate thing for someone to have opinions about. Tone is reviewable. Timing is reviewable. Judgment is reviewable. The attack does not have to be an insult. It only has to be a second topic. Now the part the advice always misses. You are not the audience. In 2023, Sarah Harsey and Jennifer Freyd ran an experiment on 230 students. Everybody read the same account of the same accusation. Half of them saw the accused person respond with DARVO. Half did not. The account of the incident itself was identical in every version. In the author's own words, DARVO exposed participants rated the victim as more abusive and less believable, and also expressed less willingness to punish the perpetrator and greater willingness to punish the victim. Same account. A different picture of who the difficult one was. Here is what that study was. A written scenario about a professor accused of groping a student, judged by undergraduates. It varied a second thing alongside DARVO, whether the accused also offered an insincere apology. And the authors point out that the accused outranked his accuser, and that they did not test what rank was doing. So, applying it to a complaint at work is my argument, not theirs. But look at what follows if the shape holds. The reversal is not a move against you. It is a performance, and the room is where it lands. Which is why the thing you do next matters far more than it looks. Hold that thought. It is the fourth sign, and it is the one nobody warns you about. Almost every account of workplace manipulation starts with a lie. This one doesn't. Go back to Wes's first 4 words. Let's park what he actually said. Read that as a denial and you will get it wrong. It isn't one. He hasn't said Anton didn't say it. He hasn't said Iris misheard. He has agreed there is a thing Anton said and set it on a shelf. This is where this video separates from the gaslighting video on this channel. That one argued the workplace version contains no denial at all. This has a denial-shaped move, but it works by deferral, not contradiction. And deferral is much better from Wes's side. A denial gives Iris something to prove. Parking gives her nothing to push against. You cannot argue with later. Watch what it does to her next sentence. She has one strong fact. Anton said it in a room with 4 other people in it. If Wes denied it, she says so. Since he has agreed and shelved it, the only move left is to ask when they come back to it, which sounds like impatience. The tell. The original event is never contradicted. It is postponed in a sentence that sounds like organization. The counter. Put the parking on the record as a decision, not as a delay. I'm happy to come back to what he said later. I'd just like it written down that we're choosing to do that. Second half of Wes's sentence. This is the whole video in 6 words. How you've been characterizing this. Not what happened. Not what Anton said. How Iris has been characterizing it. The subject of the meeting has been replaced, and the replacement is a person. It is why manipulative people who pretend to be nice are so much harder to describe afterwards than people who shout. There is nothing to report. Wes has been warm the whole time. He is not accusing Iris of lying. That would be a claim, and a claim can be tested. He is expressing concern about a manner. There is research on what happens when someone speaks up in a way that challenges rather than supports. Ethan Burris published it in the Academy of Management Journal in 2012, across 1 field study and 2 experiments. Managers rated employees who spoke up in challenging ways as worse performers and backed their ideas less than employees who spoke up supportively. 2 things about that. It was both. The ideas got less support, and the person got re-rated. And Burris was studying challenging voice, which means speaking up about how things are done, not reporting a colleague's conduct. He was not studying a swap. But the second half is the part that looks like one. The challenge was not simply dismissed. The person was re-rated. The tell. The sentence stops being about an event and starts being about a quality, your tone, your framing, your pattern, your judgment. The counter. Accept the second topic and refuse to let it replace the first. I'll talk about how I raised it. I want that to be a separate conversation from what he said, not the same one. 2 days later, Wes again, and now there is a third person in the story who has not spoken. I should say, Anton's found the last week pretty difficult. I don't think you realized how it landed. The reversal is now complete. Anton was the subject of the concern. Anton is now the person being harmed. And look at how little work that took. Nobody said Iris was wrong. Nobody said Anton was innocent. Somebody was simply described as upset, and upset outranks accurate in almost every room you will ever sit in. Most advice on how to deal with difficult people at work assumes the difficulty is in their manner. They're loud, they're rude, they're impossible. Wes is none of those things. The difficulty is in the sequence. Every sentence he has said would be reasonable on its own, in a different order, about a different subject. If the room now holds 2 facts, Anton said something, and Anton is distressed, the second is warm, human, and immediate, and the first is on a shelf. Iris has to choose. Push. And she is the person who kept going after being told a colleague was struggling. Stop, and the parked fact stays parked. There is no version of that choice where the original event comes back. The tell. The person you raised a concern about acquires a feeling, and the feeling becomes the thing that needs managing. The counter. Name the 2 things as 2 things, out loud, without contesting the feeling. I don't doubt he's found it hard. I'd still like an answer on what he said. And here is the part that every piece of advice on this topic gets exactly backwards. Document everything. Stay calm. Put it in writing. You have read that in 100 places, and Iris does it. She sends a short, unemotional summary after each conversation. She uses dates. She does not editorialize. Every one of those messages is now in a file whose subject is Iris. Once the topic has swapped, calmness is not neutral. It is evidence of persistence. 3 careful emails are a pattern. A dated summary is a record of how much attention someone is giving this. The qualities the advice tells you to display are, in the new frame, the qualities being reviewed. That last part is my argument, and I have no study for it. There is research on what follows when people resist out loud. Lilia Cortina and Vicky Magley, writing in the Journal of Occupational Health Psychology in 2003, surveyed 1,167 public sector employees. They looked at two kinds of retaliation reported by employees who had vocally resisted being mistreated: retaliation at work and retaliation socially. And which kind someone met depended on where the two people sat relative to each other. That is one survey, taken at one moment, in one sector. Now, the finding from the same study that cuts against everything I have just said. Leaving it out would make this video dishonest. They also found health costs to silence. Enduring mistreatment without voicing resistance carried its own damage. So the answer is not to say nothing. That is the trap on the other side. And the same paper closes it. The tell. Your own conduct in the process becomes the subject of the process. The counter. Send the record to a place where it cannot be reread as your behavior. I'm sending this summary so there's one version of what was said. Copying you both so it sits with the incident, not with me. Now the safeguard. This pattern is easy to see everywhere once you have a name for it. Not every disagreement is this. A manager can genuinely think you handled something badly and be right. Someone can genuinely be upset. Tone can genuinely be a problem. And hearing about it is not persecution. The difference is not warmth, and it is not intent. It is whether the first thing ever comes back. If somebody says, "We'll deal with what he said on Thursday," and separately, "I want to talk about how you raised it," and Thursday happens, that is two conversations, and it is fine. If Thursday never arrives, and the only live subject 3 weeks later is your manner, then the parking was not a delay. It was the mechanism. One conversation, split in two, with both halves alive. Or one conversation, replaced by another one, with the first half never mentioned again. That is the whole test, and you can apply it without diagnosing anybody. 4 signs, in the order they arrived. The parked fact, the event is postponed, never contradicted. The conduct swap, the subject stops being what happened and becomes what you're like. The injured party, the person you raised a concern about, becomes the person being harmed. And the growing file, your careful, documented, unemotional responses, become the material. Here is the one thing to take from the research rather than from me. When people watch that reversal in a controlled experiment, their view of both people moved on the same account. That is what it does, whatever anyone intends by it. It works on a room, which is why arguing harder inside the room does not help. You are trying to win something that is not being decided there. So change what you are doing. Not calmer. Not more evidence. Separated. 2 records, kept apart. What happened, with a date and a name on it. And how you raised it, which you can discuss as much as anyone likes, somewhere else. Say it in the meeting. I'm happy to have both conversations. I'm not happy to have them as one conversation. 11 words that put the shelf back in view. Nothing there requires you to decide what kind of person Wes is. That question has no answer you can act on. The sentence has a subject. You can see it, and you can ask for it back. The next thing worth understanding is what happens when nobody has to reverse anything at all. When a whole team quietly arrives at the same account of you, and no single person ever said it. That's mobbing, and it's the next video.